From the shimmering, heat-hazed horizon, a shadow detached itself, then another, until the unmistakable form of a male leopard emerged, his coat a symphony of rosettes against the tawny earth. He moved with a deliberate, almost regal bearing, each muscle rippling beneath scarred fur, testament to a lifetime of survival in the unforgiving African bush. But it wasn't his solitary majesty that captured the eye. It was what followed closely behind him. Two tiny, spotted bundles of boundless energy, their miniature tails swishing, their eyes wide with curiosity, stumbled in his wake. This majestic male, scarred but triumphant, was leading not one, but two precious cubs towards a familiar human settlement, a cluster of buildings nestled amidst thorn trees. The scene was a breathtaking, heartwarming echo of a past salvation, a silent plea made manifest. This remarkable rendezvous was unfolding near the remote conservation center run by Dr. Eleanor Vance, an American wildlife veterinarian whose name resonated with respect and admiration throughout the continent. Dr. Vance, a woman whose passion for big cats burned brighter than the fiercest equatorial sun, had dedicated her life to understanding, saving, and ultimately protecting these magnificent creatures. Her center, located deep within a specific unnamed African country, was a beacon of hope, focusing on the critical triad of rescue, rehabilitation, and release. Her team, a dedicated cohort of local experts and international volunteers, worked tirelessly, driven by the shared belief that every life, no matter how small or wild, deserved a fighting chance. Years prior, this very leopard, then a critically injured cub, had been brought to their center. They had named him Quito, a Swahili word meaning precious, a moniker that proved tragically apt. Quito was discovered by rangers, a shattered, whimpering bundle of fur, a victim of a brutal poaching attempt that had claimed his mother and left him orphaned and teetering on the precipice of death. When he arrived, his tiny body bore the horrific evidence of his ordeal: a severely broken leg, deep lacerations, and the unmistakable terror in his eyes. He was barely clinging to life, a fragile testament to the ruthless cruelty of man. The challenges they faced to save him were immense, almost insurmountable. Every single member of Dr. Vance's team knew with a sinking certainty that Quito's chances of survival, let alone a return to the wild, were incredibly slim. Yet, they refused to surrender. They poured every ounce of their expertise, every waking hour, every hopeful prayer into the fragile cub, fighting against the grim prognosis that hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud. His recovery would become a defining chapter in the center's history, a story whispered around campfires and shared with hopeful donors. And now, years later, the very leopard they had nursed back from the brink of death had returned, not alone, but with the next generation in tow, almost as if he were presenting them, a gift of enduring trust and profound remembrance. This extraordinary return wasn't just a biological imperative, it was a deeply emotional and almost unbelievable reconnection. Before we delve deeper into Quito's incredible journey of survival and his unexpected return, a quick reminder to please subscribe to our channel, join our growing community, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more incredible wildlife tales, stories of resilience, and the relentless efforts of those fighting to protect our planet's most majestic creatures. Your support helps us share these vital narratives and continue our mission of raising awareness for wildlife conservation. Quito's injuries as a cub were nothing short of catastrophic, a testament to the brutal realities of life in the wild exacerbated by human cruelty. A shattered right hind leg, its bones splintered and protruding, was the most obvious trauma. But beneath the surface, a full diagnostic scan revealed massive internal bleeding, likely from a blunt force impact, which threatened his tiny organs. Psychologically, the terror of the poaching attempt had left an indelible mark. He would flinch at sudden movements, his eyes wide with a deep-seated fear that even the gentlest touch could not immediately assuage. Dr. Vance, with her years of experience, recognized the profound psychological trauma as perhaps the most challenging aspect of his recovery, knowing that a broken spirit often proved harder to mend than a broken bone. The team embarked on an arduous journey of round-the-clock care. The first few days were a blur of critical interventions, stabilizing his internal condition, transfusions, and administering potent antibiotics to ward off infection. Dr. Vance led 2 complex surgeries on his leg, painstakingly reconstructing the shattered bone using tiny pins and plates, a procedure that demanded both scientific precision and a delicate touch. Specialized rehabilitation followed. Days bled into weeks, then months, filled with carefully calibrated exercises to restore strength and mobility to his damaged limb. They built a custom-padded enclosure for him, allowing him to hobble without aggravating his wound, and introduced him to gentle enrichment activities designed to rebuild his confidence. Each small step, from his first tentative weight-bearing to a short, wobbly walk, was met with quiet celebration by the dedicated staff. The relentless threat of poaching and human-wildlife conflict loomed large, an ever-present shadow that had almost claimed Quito's young life and continued to endanger countless other magnificent creatures in the region. It was a battle Dr. Vance and her team fought daily, not just with scalpels and medicines, but with education, community outreach, and unwavering advocacy. Quito's case was a stark reminder of the indiscriminate violence inflicted upon these animals, often for perceived economic gain or out of fear. The emotional toll on Dr. Vance and her team was immense. They witnessed firsthand the suffering caused by human encroachment and greed, and each rescue was a heavy responsibility, a hopeful yet often heartbreaking endeavor. Many times they returned to the center, hearts heavy after losing an animal despite their best efforts, the weight of their mission palpable. Quito's recovery was slow and often painful, but fueled by an undeniable will to survive. He gradually learned to walk again, his gait forever bearing a slight, almost imperceptible hitch, a scar of his past. Once physically stronger, the team began the delicate process of reintroducing him to his innate wild instincts. They used simulated hunting scenarios, carefully observing his predatory behaviors in a controlled environment. Live prey, initially small and easy to catch, was introduced to sharpen his reflexes and hone his killer instinct. It was crucial he could hunt effectively to survive independently. Every successful pounce, every calculated stalk, brought a wave of relief over the team. Simultaneously, they meticulously planned for his eventual re-release into the wild, selecting a protected area with ample prey and minimal human disturbance, a place where he could finally reclaim his birthright and thrive, free from the shadows of his painful beginnings. The hope was that this second chance would be a true one, enabling him to forget the fear and embrace the freedom he so rightly deserved. The day arrived with a palpable tension that hung heavy in the African air, thicker than the dust motes dancing in the morning light. It was Quito's release day. He had grown from a fragile, broken cub into a magnificent, sleek, subadult leopard, his muscles rippling with renewed strength. The scars remained, faint badges of his past ordeal, but they were almost an afterthought compared to the vibrant life that now pulsed through him. Dr. Vance and her team moved with a practiced, somber efficiency, every action measured, every glance filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. They had poured countless hours, immeasurable expertise, and profound emotional investment into Quito's recovery. Now, it was time to let him go, to trust in the wilderness they had worked so hard to protect. The transport crate, surprisingly quiet with Quito inside, was carefully positioned at the edge of the designated release zone, a vast, protected area teeming with natural prey and water sources. As the final latch was released, a collective breath was held. The door swung open, revealing the dark interior. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. Quito remained within, a shadow reluctant to step into the blinding freedom. Dr. Vance felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Had they done enough? Would he remember his wild instincts, or had human intervention domesticated him too much? The weight of their responsibility pressed down, a heavy cloak of anxiety. Then, with a sudden fluid movement, Quito emerged. He paused, his emerald eyes scanning the expansive landscape before him, taking in the scents and sounds of his rightful home. His tail twitched with an almost imperceptible tremor, a final flicker of hesitation. Then, he moved, not with a burst of frantic energy, but with a deliberate, confident stride, melting into the tall grass as if he had never left. The team watched, transfixed, as his spotted form became one with the dappled light of the savanna. He didn't look back. He simply vanished. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the chirping of unseen birds. It was a silence filled with relief, but also a lingering uncertainty. The next few months were a roller coaster of emotions. Quito was fitted with a tracking collar, allowing them to monitor his progress remotely. Every signal, every ping from the tracker was scrutinized. There were days of worry when his signal remained stationary for too long, or when it moved towards the dangerous periphery of human settlements. Then there were days of immense celebration. The first confirmation of a successful hunt filled the conservation center with whoops of joy. Quito was reclaiming his place, proving his prowess. He established a territory, a vast expanse that he fiercely defended, marking it with the unmistakable signs of a dominant male. Tracking data showed him successfully navigating the complex social dynamics of the wild, avoiding established male leopards, and engaging in appropriate behaviors with females. He was thriving. He was surviving. The naysayers, those who had questioned the wisdom of releasing a cat so heavily habituated to human care, were silenced. Quito's journey became a powerful testament to the tireless efforts of Dr. Vance and her team. Their initial anxieties slowly dissolved, replaced by an overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. He had not only recovered but had flourished, a living embodiment of resilience and the wild spirit they strived to protect. The once broken cub was now a formidable lord of the savanna, a ghost of spots and shadows, proof that even the most dire circumstances could be overcome with dedication and unwavering hope. His successful adaptation wasn't just a win for Quito. It was a win for conservation itself, a beacon of hope in the ongoing fight to preserve these magnificent creatures. Years melted into each other, a steady rhythm of sun-drenched days and star-choked nights. Dr. Vance and her team continued their relentless work at the Conservation Center, their days filled with new rescues, ongoing rehabilitation efforts, and the constant battle to protect the fragile ecosystems they cherished. Quito's story became a cherished legend, a powerful reminder of what was possible when passion met purpose. His successful rewilding fueled their resolve, inspiring them through countless challenges and setbacks. The savanna thrived, or so it seemed, under the watchful eyes of dedicated conservationists and the tireless efforts of nature itself. However, the delicate balance of the African wilderness is always susceptible to the whims of nature and the increasing pressures of a changing climate. A subtle shift began, almost imperceptible at first, a gradual drying of the perennial rivers, a shortening of the rainy seasons. The lush green vibrancy that usually followed the rains grew fainter each year, replaced by a parched, fragile landscape. The initial concern grew into a quiet apprehension, then into an undeniable dread as the drought tightened its grip across the entire conservation area. This wasn't just a dry spell. It was a prolonged, severe drought, unlike anything they had witnessed in decades. The impact was immediate and devastating. The lifeblood of the savanna, its water sources, began to shrink, turning once flowing rivers into dusty beds and water holes into cracked earth. The vegetation, crucial for the herbivores, withered and died. With less food and water for the prey animals, the wildebeest, zebra, and various antelope species, their populations began to dwindle. A ripple effect spread through the food chain, reaching the apex predators. The majestic lions grew lean, their roars carrying a new undertone of desperation. Cheetahs struggled to maintain their explosive speed on meager rations, and leopards, skilled and adaptable as they were, faced unprecedented challenges. Competition intensified dramatically. Animals, driven by an instinct for survival, were forced to cover greater distances in search of sustenance, often straying into unfamiliar and dangerous territories. The natural order was disrupted, replaced by a cutthroat struggle for existence where only the strongest, or perhaps the luckiest, would endure. The team at the Conservation Center watched with heavy hearts as the crisis unfolded. Their rescue calls increased exponentially. Starving elephants, weakened by thirst, became trapped in mud pits. Emaciated antelope succumbed to opportunistic predators or simply collapsed from exhaustion. The reports from their tracking collars painted a grim picture. Territories were shrinking. Skirmishes between rival predators were becoming more frequent and violent, and the overall health of the wildlife population was deteriorating rapidly. The vibrant tapestry of life was fraying at the edges, threatening to unravel completely. This ecological disaster brought with it another insidious threat, an increased risk of human-wildlife conflict. As natural food and water sources vanished in the wild, desperate animals began to venture closer to human settlements. Elephants raided crops, lions preyed on livestock, and leopards, the normally secretive hunters, were spotted more frequently near villages as they sought any available meal. The delicate coexistence that years of conservation efforts had fostered was now under severe strain. Dr. Vance and her team found themselves battling not only the forces of nature, but also the growing tensions between humans and the beleaguered wildlife they were sworn to protect. The once bright hope that Quito had embodied now felt overshadowed by the relentless, encroaching shadows of a dying land. Years passed, marked by the rhythmic struggles and triumphs inherent in wildlife conservation. Dr. Vance's team, though smaller than she wished, remained a dedicated force, their days a relentless cycle of rescues, research, and community outreach. The memory of Quito became a foundational story within the center, a constant reminder of what was possible with enough commitment. But the tranquil rhythm they had established was about to be shattered by an unseen, insidious adversary. The seasons began to shift erratically. Rain, once a dependable lifeblood, became scarce, then virtually non-existent. The vibrant green turned to bone-dry khaki. The African bush, usually teeming with life, began to suffer. Grasslands withered, waterholes evaporated into cracked earth, and the mighty rivers dwindled to trickles. This wasn't merely a dry spell. It was a prolonged, severe drought that gripped the region, tightening its suffocating hold with each passing month. The impact on the wildlife was devastating and immediate. Prey animals, once abundant, grew thin and desperate, forced to travel vast distances in search of sustenance, often putting them at greater risk from predators. But even the predators began to feel the pinch. Competition for dwindling resources escalated, leading to more frequent, more violent clashes. Dr. Vance's team found themselves stretched thinner than ever before. Their resources, already finite, were pushed to their absolute limits. Every day brought new reports of animals in distress: emaciated antelopes caught in snares, elephants seeking water in human settlements, leading to dangerous confrontations, and unfortunately, increasing instances of big cats succumbing to starvation or injury from territorial disputes. The delicate balance of the ecosystem was fracturing under the immense pressure. They worked tirelessly, often round the clock, their faces etched with exhaustion and worry, their hearts heavy with each loss, yet fueled by an unyielding spirit to save what they could. The news that trickled in from the periphery of Quito's former territory was particularly disturbing. There were consistent, troubling reports of a female leopard struggling immensely to protect her young. Her hunting efforts were reportedly less successful, her condition deteriorating, and the cubs, critically, were observed to be increasingly vulnerable. The thought of any leopard, let alone a mother and her offspring, facing such a bleak future in their once thriving habitat was agonizing. It was during one such harrowing survey mission, a grim assessment of a parched riverbed, that a profound and almost unbelievable discovery was made. Marcus, one of Dr. Vance's most experienced field rangers, paused, his binoculars fixed on a distant, rocky outcrop where a small group of leopards seemed to be moving with a strange, hesitant urgency. His breath hitched in his throat. He lowered the binoculars, then raised them again, zooming in, his brow furrowed in intense concentration. There, unmistakably, was a male leopard, leaner than Marcus remembered, his movements more cautious, almost protective. But it wasn't his slight gauntness that made Marcus's heart pound. It was the distinct, jagged scar pattern just above his left eye, a mark that no one on the team could ever forget. It was Quito, but the real shock came next. Quito wasn't alone. He was actively, deliberately, leading a female leopard and, incredibly, two tiny, dappled cubs through the treacherous, drought-ridden landscape. He moved with a sense of purpose, his head held low, constantly checking on his small family, guiding them through what appeared to be an impossible journey. The implications of this sighting were immediate and overwhelming. Quito, the leopard they had saved, the one who had thrived in the wild, was now bringing his own family through a perilous area, seemingly towards the very edge of the human settlement, towards the familiar scent of the conservation center. It was an act of desperation, yes, but also one that hinted at a deep, ingrained memory, a faint echo of trust. The dusty track leading to the conservation center had seen countless animal movements, both wild and human, but never anything quite like this. Dr. Vance, observing from a discreet distance through powerful binoculars, felt a familiar surge of adrenaline mixed with an almost dizzying sense of disbelief. Quito, the leopard she had dedicated years of her life to saving, the very embodiment of wild independence, was deliberately guiding his small family towards the perimeter fence. There was no hesitation in his movements, no random wandering. This was a calculated, purposeful approach. He was leading them directly to the place where he had found healing, a place he hadn't returned to since his release years ago. It was an unprecedented act, a profound breach of the invisible wall between the wild and the human sphere, driven by an instinct she could only interpret as a desperate plea. His gait, though still powerful, showed a subtle weariness that hadn't been present during his prime. His head was held high, his ears swiveling, constantly assessing their surroundings, but his focus remained unwavering on the chain-link barrier ahead. The female, slender and cautious, followed closely behind him, her eyes darting nervously. Her steps were tentative, burdened by the responsibility of her two tiny, dappled cubs who wobbled on unsteady legs, their wide, innocent eyes absorbing the strange new world. One of the cubs stumbled, letting out a small, plaintive mewl, and Quito immediately paused, turning his head slightly, a low rumble emanating from his chest, a soft reassurance that echoed through the quiet afternoon. He wasn't just bringing them to a place. He was bringing them to their place, his sanctuary. Dr. Vance's heart ached with a complex cocktail of emotions. Pride for the incredible journey Quito had made, awe at the sheer audacity and intelligence of his decision, and a deep, almost maternal instinct to protect this vulnerable unit. She remembered the fear in his cub eyes, the pain in his shattered leg, the long nights spent coaxing him to eat, the meticulous care during his rehabilitation. Now, seeing him as a father, a protector, making such an extraordinary choice for his offspring, solidified the profound connection she had always felt. This wasn't just an animal seeking refuge. This was Quito, her Quito, remembering kindness, remembering safety, and trusting them implicitly with the future of his lineage. She lowered the binoculars, a silent command passing between her and her team members. They understood. This was more than a wildlife sighting. It was a sacred moment of trust. Quito was placing his most precious cargo, his very legacy, into their hands. The implications were staggering. Allowing wild leopards, especially with cubs, into the immediate vicinity of the center was fraught with potential dangers. But turning them away, knowing the desperation that must have driven Quito to this extreme measure, felt like an unforgivable betrayal. The drought had stripped the land bare, turning once lush riverbeds into cracked earth, silencing the usual symphony of the bush. Prey animals were scarce, desperate, and often too weak to be pursued effectively by predators already grappling with dwindling resources. Quito's decision wasn't born of casual curiosity. It was a stark testament to the severity of the crisis unfolding in the wild. He wasn't just thin. He was lean in a way that spoke of prolonged hardship, of countless failed hunts and endless struggle. The female, too, bore the marks of scarcity in her gaunt frame. Their very survival, and more importantly, the survival of their offspring, hung in the balance. As Quito moved closer, his eyes, those intense golden pools, met hers across the distance. In that silent exchange, Dr. Vance saw not just a request for help, but a deep, unwavering trust. It was the same intelligent understanding she had witnessed during his recovery, the same resilience that had allowed him to overcome near-certain death. He was relying on their shared history, on the bond forged in pain and healing. He was telling her, without a single vocalization, that he remembered. He remembered the safety, the sustenance, the gentle hands that had nursed him back to life. And now, he was bringing his family to that same haven, banking everything on the hope that the compassion he had once received would extend to his cubs. The emotional weight of that realization settled heavily upon her, a powerful mixture of wonder and immense responsibility. This was an opportunity, a truly unique situation that transcended their usual protocols, demanding an immediate, heartfelt response. A critical decision point loomed large, heavy with the weight of immediate consequences. Allowing Quito and his family to enter the sanctuary, even a temporary section, carried inherent risks. Wild leopards, especially a male with cubs, could be unpredictable. There was the danger to the staff, to the other rehabilitated animals, and the potential for a breach in their carefully maintained disease protocols. The sanctity of the conservation center, its very purpose, relied on a delicate balance of control and wildness. Yet, turning them away, knowing the desperation that had driven Quito to this extraordinary plea, felt like a betrayal of everything Dr. Vance and her team stood for. It would almost certainly mean their demise in the brutal grip of the prolonged drought, a cruel end for a creature who had already overcome so much. Dr. Vance surveyed her team, their faces etched with the same apprehension and understanding she felt. No one spoke, but the unspoken consensus was clear. This was not a moment for bureaucratic deliberation or rigid adherence to standard operating procedures. This was a moment for instinct, for compassion, and for honoring an unprecedented act of trust. Slowly, deliberately, Dr. Vance made the difficult choice. "Prepare the perimeter enclosure," she instructed, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Open Sector Gamma. We'll guide them in gently." Sector Gamma was a large, securely fenced area, typically used for newly arrived rescues before their full integration into the main facility. It was robust, with high walls designed to contain dangerous animals, and crucially, it was currently empty. Her team sprang into action, a flurry of focused movement. Gates were checked, additional monitoring cameras activated, and tranquilizer darts prepared as a last resort, though Dr. Vance prayed they wouldn't be needed. The air crackled with a mixture of tension and an almost palpable excitement. Quito watched their preparations with an unnerving stillness, his gaze unwavering as if he understood each action, each careful adjustment. He shifted slightly, nudging the female gently forward with his nose, and she in turn coaxed the two tiny, bewildered cubs closer. They were a pathetic sight, their ribs barely hidden beneath their mottled coats, their movements hesitant and weak. As the massive metal gate to Sector Gamma began to grind open with a low hum, Quito took a deep breath, his nostrils flaring slightly. He didn't hesitate. With a silent, almost reverent act of faith, he led his family inside. The female followed, her eyes darting nervously but trusting in Quito's lead. The cubs, too small to fully comprehend the enormity of the moment, stumbled along on unsteady legs, their tiny paws barely disturbing the dry earth. The gate slowly closed behind them, sealing them within the temporary sanctuary. The team moved quickly but calmly, their movements practiced and efficient. Bowls of fresh water were placed strategically near a shady outcrop of rocks, followed by nutrient-rich, easily digestible food. Quito approached the water first, drinking deeply, his throat working visibly, before stepping aside for the female and cubs. They drank almost ravenously, their small bodies seemingly rehydrating before their very eyes. The cubs, though frail, began to tentatively explore their new surroundings, their initial fear giving way to a cautious curiosity. Dr. Vance watched from a safe distance, a profound sense of relief washing over her. Quito stood sentinel, his watchful eyes sweeping the enclosure, then settling on his cubs as they finally began to eat. He was still lean, still bearing the marks of his struggle, but a new spark seemed to ignite within his golden gaze. He had done it. He had brought his family to safety, placing his absolute faith in the humans who had once saved his own life. The trust was mutual, an unspoken pact forged years ago and reaffirmed in this desperate, beautiful moment. The cubs, though vulnerable and clearly impacted by the harsh conditions, were safe. For now, they were safe. The decision made, the temporary sanctuary opened, Quito and his family found immediate, much-needed relief. The Conservation Center's dedicated team worked tirelessly, providing a safe, monitored environment where the leopards could recover. Fresh water, plentiful and clean, was available at all times, and carefully chosen prey, simulating natural hunting conditions but guaranteeing success, helped Quito, his mate, and the cubs regain their strength. The cubs, initially frail and skittish, began to fill out, their playful energy slowly returning as their bellies grew full and their fears subsided. Dr. Vance observed them daily, her heart swelling with gratitude and hope. This wasn't just about saving individual lives, it was about preserving a lineage, a vital thread in the delicate tapestry of the African wilderness. Months passed, and the brutal drought eventually began to yield. The heavens opened, first with gentle drizzles, then with life-giving downpours. The parched earth drank deeply, and within weeks, a verdant carpet of new growth began to emerge, transforming the landscape. Riverbeds, once dry and cracked, flowed with renewed vigor, attracting an abundance of prey animals. The ecosystem slowly breathed again, regenerating with a resilience that mirrored Quito's own journey. The time for the leopard family's re-release was approaching, a moment Dr. Vance and her team anticipated with a mixture of excitement and a touch of wistful sadness. They meticulously planned the rewilding process, choosing a new, thriving section of the reserve, far from human settlements, rich in prey, and boasting ample cover. This area offered the best possible chance for Quito's family to establish a new territory and flourish without the immediate pressures of the previous drought-stricken region. The transition was gradual, designed to minimize stress and maximize their chances of successful adaptation. Quito, now robust and magnificent, seemed to understand. His vigilance was ever present, but a calm assurance radiated from him as he watched his cubs, now strong and agile, playfully pounce on each other. His mate, too, had transformed, her sleek coat gleaming, her eyes bright with health. The day of their ultimate return to the wild arrived, a poignant echo of Quito's own first re-release years ago. But this time it was different. This wasn't just Quito the survivor. This was Quito the father, the patriarch, leading his family towards a future brimming with possibility. As the gate to their temporary enclosure opened, Quito paused, looking back at the human faces that had offered sanctuary. There was no fear, no aggression, only a silent acknowledgement, a flicker of that profound trust that had brought him here. Then, with a fluid, powerful stride, he led his mate and their two thriving cubs into the embrace of the lush, revitalized bush. They disappeared quickly, blending seamlessly into the dappled light and shadow, becoming one with the wild heart of Africa once more. Dr. Vance watched until they were gone, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. It was a tear of joy, of relief, and of overwhelming awe at the enduring spirit of nature and the profound connection that can exist between species. Quito's story was a powerful testament to the fact that healing doesn't just mend physical wounds. It can foster trust, inspire hope, and ultimately lead to new life and a brighter future for generations to come. His journey from an orphaned, injured cub to a thriving father bringing his own offspring to the place of his healing was more than just a remarkable tale of survival. It was a profound symbol of the success of dedicated conservation efforts and the unwavering memory of animals. It underscored that empathy and intervention could truly turn the tide, offering a lifeline in the face of overwhelming adversity. This incredible narrative woven from pain, resilience, and an unbreakable bond, serves as a powerful reminder of why their work at the center truly matters. If Quito's extraordinary story has touched your heart and filled you with hope, please consider subscribing to our channel. Join our growing community of wildlife enthusiasts and help us continue to share these inspiring tales of resilience and conservation, stories that demonstrate the incredible power of healing and the promise of a brighter future for all creatures, great and small. Every subscriber helps us bring more such heartwarming sagas directly to you. And for our next adventure, prepare yourselves for the astonishing rescue of a rare black rhino caught in an unexpected flood. A tale equally fraught with peril and triumph.